Loi Hong Sin, why did he go looking for Loi Hong Sin? Lydium responded, neither hot nor cold. My father searched for him first, but everyone around him was too dictatorial. Quan Diem Dao seemed annoyed with a serious face. Do you mean I'm dictatorial? Maybe so. But how did your father fare after following Loi Hong Sin for 10 years? I didn't say Lythe's martial arts studio was recognized by anyone. Hearing this, Lydium's face turned colder, but he had to admit the truth. Even when my father died, no one recognized him. Quan Diem Dao heard Lydium's dissatisfaction and continued, Yem Xianlin is 90 years old and still eats 2 bowls of rice. Your father, at only 40-something, had already passed away. It was pointless, he said, taking an envelope from under the pillow and handing it to Lydium. Lydium looked at the date on the letter, which was 5 years ago. After reading the contents, he invites the Guangdong martial arts schools to join the board of directors. Congratulations to Lythe on opening a new martial arts studio as the new owner. The old man's eyes dimmed like a dying light. At that time, I wrote the letter, hoping the local martial arts schools would support you. But I didn't expect your father to pass away just 7 days later. He took off his hat, smiled, then went from Fusen to Guangcha. In total, he found and destroyed 19 martial arts schools, breaking their signs, and isolated himself from the Guangdong martial arts community. By the time I received the letter, he was already on his way back north. Even though he was less impulsive or delayed in taking action, my father's lifelong dream had come true. Lydium nodded. An old man can sometimes be foolish, wanting to survive. Whether good or bad, I have to endure. But the dead can't repeat their mistakes. The dumbest thing my father did in his life was to stay with them for 10 years, dreaming of a martial arts school. Quan Diem Dao got angry. Are you talking about your own father like that? How disrespectful. Lydium laughed loudly. He beat me with a bamboo stick since I was young until he died, and I didn't dodge. Now I can't even say 2 words about him. The old man trembled, his lips slightly quivering. After a moment of silence, he asked Lydium directly, Do you have any plans for your return this time? Lydium replied coldly, Sister Leuten understands better. The old man closed his eyes and shook his head. I'm dying soon. Everything worth teaching has been taught over the years. The only one who truly learned was you. Lydium remained cold and didn't respond. You have thousands of disciples, but it's my turn to have you. Your father will be proud. Lydium listened quietly, then said, I don't want to blame him. He wants to repay the kindness of teaching me in the past, and I have no way to repay it. Quan Diem Dao looked at Lydium calmly and said, As the chairman of the Martial Arts Association, if you want to support the Loi family, I can arrange it. Just like the day I die, you will be the first to support my soul. Lydium remained silent, his eyes showing a hint of strangeness. 10 days later, it was raining heavily. The hallway echoed with silent cries. The old man lay on the bed, telling Lydium the old story, and finally admitted, Sorry, your father. After saying this, Quan Diem Dao closed his eyes, and his fingers slowly slid down. Lydium stood by the bed, bowing his head in silence. Months later, during the Martial Arts Association's funeral, Leuten wore black and bowed to the old man, then walked down the hallway to find Lydium. He told him that supporting his soul was a precious legacy, and in the future, many would come forward to help his brothers. For this, Lydium remained indifferent. It's only related to the 2 of us. We, members of the association, are in conflict with each other. It may lead to distractions. You and they have an underlying hatred, which will sooner or later result in a debt. Leuten said no more, just asked Lydium to come to her office tomorrow. But Lydium threw away his cigarette and walked away. After Quan Diem Dao's death, Leuten became the president of the Martial Arts Association, as she had hoped. At the end of the month, she announced the organization of a grand event, a traditional martial arts exchange festival, welcoming martial artists from all over the world and enthusiasts of traditional martial arts, with prizes totaling NDT 300,000. The event also included real combat competitions, with the highest prize being NDT 1 million. Diem sat on the office sofa, and Tin asked Tankung, who was to become the third fire minister, "How many Thai boxers have you found? Are they reliable, like the special forces?" Hearing Diem's question, Tin raised her head high. "They are all famous martial artists in their country." Diem waved his hand and smiled. But both sides understood each other. Sooner or later, they would receive good news from each other. "As long as you don't play anymore, it's fine." Tin winked mischievously and said, "No problem." Diem flipped through the martial arts documents, only seeing the name Truong Minh Vien. She immediately inquired, "How do you plan to arrange with Truong Minh Vien?" Tin replied, "Minh Vien is very promising. If he agrees, I want to turn him into a new martial arts star. Of course, if the senior brother prefers, he is still the most suitable." Diem waved off the suggestion. "No need. The path of you elders cannot lead to great success. Let's see how Taekwondo promotes. Perhaps that's the right way. Have you asked Truong Minh Vien's opinion yet? Don't underestimate him just because he's young." Tin sighed at the mention. "He told me he doesn't want to just study for kindness. I'm also in a dilemma. So, with your relationship with him, please advise him to help me." At that moment, a knock on the door interrupted them. Tin knew it was Truong Minh Vien and smiled, opening the door. As the door opened, the eyes of the two met. Tin found an excuse to leave the room, allowing the two to talk privately. But as she closed the door, she immediately activated the listening device. Diem sat calmly opposite Truong Minh Vien, directly asking, "How are you?" Both were surprised. The question and the answer were completely different. Truong Minh Vien pushed his glasses angrily. "Didn't you already ask me?" Diem chuckled. "You've already told me everything. Tell me how you are." Truong Minh Vien turned away and pointed at Diem. "You didn't ask me. You were her childhood friend, even childhood sweethearts. She's married now. You don't stand a chance." Diem expressed that she only wanted to meet her and nothing else. "Good things shouldn't be born alone, right? Seeing your serious face, let's leave." Truong Minh Vien was surprised. "You're leaving just like that? You're not going to help." Tin convinced me to participate in martial arts competitions." Diem interrupted him, saying firmly, "If you want to escape from fame and fortune, just go. If you don't want to, then don't. I've risked my life in battle several times already. What do you want without knowing?" As Diem stepped out, meeting Tin waiting outside, she asked, "How's it going, senior brother?" Diem sighed and shook her head, advising him not to intervene. Just leave him be. Tin didn't say anything further, only pondering the conversation just now. At Trung Sun University's office, Diem politely accepted a USB from Professor Ngo. "This is the document you need about the transformation of the Ku Fuong mythology and the process of transforming from animal worship to deity worship, from the time of grace to the combination with divine weapons." "Thank you," Diem said, then with a serious expression, asked, "In the traditional mythology of our country, who is the highest-ranking deity?" Professor Ngo laughed. "My students often ask that question too. In fact, there's no single highest deity. The mythology and folklore are part of our culture, evolving over time, often forming a complex system of influential divine beings with clear hierarchies. But in our case, we have a unique system of ancestor worship. Besides Confucianism, which limits the development of mythological beliefs, our mythology system is complex, fragmented, and the highest deity varies by era. From the mythical period, it was Dong Quan Duke, the most revered god mentioned by our ancestors. But if you asked Dong Quan, Lao Tu, and Tam Tham Quan who would win in a fight, even I don't know." Diem listened carefully to Professor Ngo's explanation, memorizing it. If his thoughts were correct, this would be the key to evolving the legacy. Leaving Trung Sun University, Diem thought about the current situation. After the recent events at Diem Phu, she felt that Diem Phu was becoming more mysterious. She understood that her knowledge was just the tip of the iceberg. If the level of awakening were increased to 100%, would it negatively impact Han Ta? If there were incidents of soul snatching, it would be trouble. It couldn't be forced. Otherwise, it might end up sacrificing herself for others. However, considering the state of Wu Chu, the probability of this happening was very low. The next issue was inheritance. It could be combined arbitrarily. Whether it was Tai Tu or Wu Chu, their awakening was much higher than hers, but their performance didn't match. It was still a simple inheritance issue. Although it couldn't be ruled out that they weren't fully exerting themselves, it could also be due to incompatible inheritances, causing bad consequences for Han Ta. According to this reasoning, Diem Phu supported Han Ta, allowing the possession of different inheritances. Of course, there had to be a solution. Perhaps the unified divine system Professor Ngo mentioned was a way to possess more inheritances. The best way was to ensure that all the inheritances one had belonged to the same divine system. Li Diem looked towards the distant sunset, smiling genuinely. It seemed that he had somewhat understood the path he needed to take. Over the next 2 days, after the old business in Guangdong concluded, Li Diem returned to his old mansion in Thuongcha to review the mythology documents compiled by Professor Ngo. He also felt overwhelmed, continuously typing to display the various branches of deity systems, such as the thunder deity, earth god, and ox demon, along with the ghost tiger, Sin Nam, and the horrifying ones. Li Diem cross-referenced each item with Professor Ngo's documents, analyzing these peculiar legacies that were certainly not from ancient times but had evolved from the Xian Quoc to the Dan Quoc era, along with records of Ko Hoch Du, a teenage girl, from the late Dan Quoc era, and dream-related entries borrowed from Japanese manga. Compiling these documents was more exhausting than he had imagined. However, after the events in Yenkin, Dan Nong was still asleep, perhaps due to absorbing a lot during the previous event, needing time to digest. Thinking so, Li Diem sighed, lay down on the sofa, and gradually fell asleep. Suddenly, former teammates and friends passed away one by one. Feng Day stood on a mountain of corpses, looking at him with a strange smile. Li Diem jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. At this moment, he found it difficult to distinguish between reality and illusion within Diem Phu. He pondered whether this world and the Diem Phu he was in were truly different. According to Mac's words, perhaps this world was also a Diem Phu. Thinking so, Li Diem suddenly felt afraid of the mysterious white force, Tu Pham Kia. Fortunately, he hadn't joined Tu Pham. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded. That's right. If you join Tu Pham, it'll be difficult for you to return to this world. Mac appeared behind Li Diem and continued, do you understand the consequences of offending Tu Van Ko? There won't be a good outcome. Tu Van Ko is the wife of Tao Vien Chiu, Tai Tu's nemesis. Remember this name. Li Diem felt a headache. In Mac's words, they all praised this woman excessively. Could this person be plotting something? He didn't want to get involved in unnecessary troubles. What he said might not be true either. He had joined the team to hunt Tai Tu, which was enough evidence of his abilities. Tai Tu said Mac was a coward, but not incapable of fighting. Thinking so, Li Diem turned back and asked, aren't you afraid of implications? Can you give me some more accumulation points? I'm a bit short. Looking at Li Diem's computer screen, Mac murmured, it's possible, but what you really need now isn't that. You can explore it yourself. I also admire you a bit. Hearing that, Li Diem tried to verify his reasoning. Are my deductions correct? Looking at Li Diem's explanation, Mac nodded. Overall, it's not wrong, but it's not necessary to combine inheritances randomly. When Han Ta reaches 100% awakening, the next step is inheritance. Pseudo-owning exclusive abilities from inheritances compresses other inheritances. They can't increase anymore. So the power of a Grandmaster Pseudo is how strong? Smiling broadly, Mac continued, it can't be compared to ordinary inheritances. After obtaining the inheritance abilities from me, I only use them for cooking meat. But I've seen Han Ta use 2 or more inheritance abilities. Their foundation is your idea. However, I'm not sure about the specifics. What I know is that their inheritance abilities all belong to the same mythology system. But Tao Vien Chiu, recognized as the strongest Han Ta, still only possesses a single pseudo-inheritance. If Tao Vien Chiu goes mad, plucking a few top-grade Diem Phu won't be difficult. He's truly a lone fighter. but he can still cause trouble for Tu fam. Mac admitted that he had spoken too broadly, then widened his smile and said to Lai Diem, "The second inheritance still greatly improves the quality of Han Ta. Or I can open the door behind for you at the next Diem Phu event. I'll find the top-grade Mao inheritance for you. Consider it a gift." Li Diem said in disbelief, "You're being too generous. It probably won't be worth a few hundred Diem Phu points." Pointing at Mac, he added, "If you truly have that capability, then give me the top-grade Qian inheritance at the next event." After hesitating for a while, Mac said, "You're afraid Tu Van Ko will trick you again, right? Oh well, just keep talking." Li Diem sat in front of the computer and said directly, "The daughter of King Niu, the wife of King Fuan then, the water counterpart of King Enga Hong." After Mac left, Lai Diem sat on the sofa, listening to the real-life drama until the end and gradually falling asleep. Suddenly, a warm sensation filled his chest. Dan Nong emerged from the pre-Xu currency on his chest, her graceful figure with a perfect waistline, devoid of any flaws, emanating classic beauty from within, stirring the hearts of those who beheld her. Lai Diem gazed at Dan Nong in awe and said softly, "Are you awake? How do you feel?" Dan Nong didn't answer Lai Diem's question, but observed her surroundings before asking, "Why is the house so messy like this?" Then, she tidied up the house, while Lai Diem felt a warm surge of emotions. He lightly said to Dan Nong, "Let's move house." Time flew by quickly in Danong. Before he knew it, Diem found himself at the 4th Diem Phu event. Holding the Chi Pearl in his hand, he remarked, "I have to figure out how to use this item." Opening the auction page, he discovered that all his useless items had been sold out, and those he didn't need were in high demand. Portraits of an 8-year-old child sold for 1,426.6 points, brushwork sold for 603 points, and trivial details about Mr. Lonke's biography sold for 383 points. Diem smiled, finding Chi's enthusiasm amusing. Searching for information about Doibang, he found that not only were the prices high, but there were also no upgrade rights to legendary status, unlike the previous auction where the upgrade rights were auctioned for 8,888 points, a transaction that took place 2 years ago. Thus, the plan involving Doibang had to be put on hold. At that moment, the system emitted a cute female voice. "You have received a purchase authorization from the owner's group. We apologize once again for the inconvenience in your previous experience and hope you can overlook it." Moving on from Chim Duoxin's compensation, only Yem Xianlin's book of notes can be selected. After sacrificing this Diem Phu event, there will be significant improvements to the Han-Ta Kim's body and command. Diem looked at the attributes of Songgoai-san and immediately named it. He thought that Yem Xianlin's item resembled the reward of a wilderness deity, essentially given for free. Each item was beyond reproach, indicating that Chim Duoxin had prepared 4 sets like this. The attribute of the postponement was too powerful, being the best weapons and equipment he had ever seen, and the most insane thing was that it had no name, indicating Chim Duoxin's ability to mass-produce such items. This ability not only reflected Chim Duoxin's personal strength and position, but also indicated the resources he possessed, far beyond Diem's imagination. The gap between him and the high-ranking Han-Ta seemed larger than he thought. At that moment, Yudao and Diem completed their contract together and were both taken back to the same room. Yudao smiled at Diem and said, "You've received Chim Duoxin's items, haven't you? I really want to curse him. The gap between us and the high-ranking Han-Ta is like that between a beggar and a tycoon." Diem understood Yudao's disappointment and didn't say anything more. He suggested that they both participate in the next hidden event, holding hands as companions for the next Yem Xianlin event after completing the contract. Diem took the initiative to ask, "Do you still need money for your Thian Qian puppet?" Yudao was surprised. He didn't expect Diem to bring this up on his own, which deeply touched him. They both exchanged personal information after reading each other's profiles. Then, the system's female voice sounded, "The Han-Ta is about to start the Diem Phu event. The Sea of Namdong in 1809 is filled with blood and death. The court is weakening. 57 pirate forces are notorious, Dongan Corporation threatens everywhere, the Bodhana Navy has never failed, continuously firing cannons and warships, Moskoyagami is unstoppable, peaceful artworks are being created, Thabin's maritime escape models are constantly emerging, Namhai has a species of female demons, Hongkwai's seas are rampant with greed, and officials are outraged at the corruption and greediness of 57 pirates. Seize the opportunity. Lydium slowly opened his eyes, suddenly realizing that his right arm was hugging the girl of about 18 or 19 years old, with exquisite beauty and a petite, soft figure like a lamb, cuddling him like a koala. Lydium carefully withdrew his hand and sat up, waking the girl despite his caution. She opened her sleepy eyes and asked, "Daddy, are you awake? Are you going to sleep some more?" Lydium looked at her big round eyes, sharp chin, and smooth white cheeks, her mind fleetingly filled with seductive and innocent thoughts. He chuckled softly, "Go back to sleep if you're still tired." The girl didn't say anything, just nodded and lay back down. Lydium lay back down, his clothes and shoes scattered around, chicken bones flying up from the ground, arranging into words, "Request for the Diem Phu event to achieve valuable goods worth 10,200 silver coins or more, to be used for worshipping the gods, and to be fully trusted by the followers." The system announced, every time you complete a Diem Phu event, you will receive a special reward, including the possibility of receiving a scroll of heritage related to this event. Lydium thought that in the previous event at Nam Than, he had completed 2 Diem Phu events, with 2 chances to receive fake inheritance. Although unsuccessful, it still gave him ideas about how to receive inheritance. This time, he sacrificed Namti Leko in hopes of gaining a significant profit. The heritage of the Diemliu land's greatest pen was a must-have this time. Suddenly, 2 white arms hugged him tightly from behind, and the girl's cheek pressed against Lydium's neck. She looked at him seductively and asked, "What are you thinking, Daddy?" Lydium chuckled and pulled her into his arms, making the girl gasp in surprise as her rosy cheeks pressed against his shoulder. He then turned and tossed her onto the bed, leaving her slightly dizzy as she called out, "Daddy!" Lydium stroked her hair and asked, "Did I give you the money yet?" The girl remained silent, not knowing what to say. Seeing this, Lydium chuckled softly and said, "So I did, thank you." Lydium pushed open the door, far away from the surging waves and the fiery bombs of the ships. The sailors were drunk and asleep, their red flags representing the largest pirate group in Namdong. Hundreds of ships and 60,000 land-based brothers, along with countless firearms and cold weapons, filled the scene. Lydium was now a pirate, a member of the Bang Hongki led by Thafunhan, with the nickname Thien Bao Tu. Naturally, Lydium had a notorious reputation. Apart from this identity, Lydium also possessed 75% expertise in naval warfare. Chet Udao sat on a bomb, smoking his pipe, not paying attention to the women's football match because now he was Thien Bao Tu. Lydium looked at Chet Udao, who seemed hesitant, and asked gently, "How are you feeling?" Chet Udao frowned. "I just woke up and already had a 30-year-old woman hugging me and calling me honey. How do you think I feel?" Lydium chuckled. "We're in similar situations then." Knowing it was just a joke, both of them suddenly jolted as a sword flew towards Lydium. Lydium swiftly grabbed the sword and counterattacked, the sword swinging like the tide, catching the drunken sailors off guard. They fell like dominoes, their guns dropping as they collapsed in pools of blood. At that moment, an archer shouted from the other side, "The guy in the red scarf is Thien Bao Tu." Lydium squinted. In a blink of an eye, he jumped onto the upper deck, gripping the sword tightly. Just as he was about to strike the archer with the iron blade, he used the hilt instead, impaling the archer's head with its feathered end. Seeing his comrades being killed, 10 ruthless men rushed towards Lydium. Hong Long emerged in the darkness, his silver sword flashing like a whirlpool. The sound of swords tearing flesh mixed with screams, creating a cacophony. In an instant, only one man was left standing. At that moment, a boy emerged from the shadows and whispered to the person next to him, "Don't panic. Thien Bao Tu is outnumbered this time. Even if we have to burn the ship, we must kill him." Chet Udale lit his pipe and muttered, "Burn the ship? Let me help you with that. Flames erupted fiercely, engulfing the two people next to him in an instant, their screams echoing across the ship. Diem approached a middle-aged woman and asked, "Are you the captain?" The woman, trembling, replied, "My husband was just shot dead." Diem's eyes turned cold. "Tell me why they wanted to kill me," he said as the boy bit his lip in silence. Diem thought to himself, "I just arrived and hurriedly hugged an 18 to 19-year-old girl, then suddenly nearly got shot while wearing clothes. It's hard to determine the origin of these scoundrels. Initially, the bounty was 2,000 silver coins, and even the local residents could participate in the hunt, observing the reward. Moreover, the pirate forces in Namdong were always fighting each other, from small gangs of 10 people on the peninsula to large gangs of thousands. There were still some major pirate forces comparable to the 5 to 7 leagues. For example, Chukwai, a noble family from Ngea, was born into poverty but became notorious for robbing merchant ships in Kwangcha, showing no mercy to anyone. Two infamous pirate leaders, Trongha and Thakin, were not much different from each other. Not to mention the naval forces of Bodana, occupying Macau, and Dongan Corporation's rampant fires engulfing the entire coastal region. Honam was a place haunted by demons. Thinking this, Diem looked at the boy and asked, "Are you from Annam?" Chaitiudao, surprised, asked how Diem knew. Diem explained that Annam and Lai Annam were popular among the pirates in Namdong, and every time the court cracked down, they retreated to Annam to hide. Therefore, Annam was considered the main base of the pirates, and even during the coups, Annam had close ties to the notorious Trongha. Then, Diem whispered to Chaitiudao, "I've sacrificed Namte Lato from Chinduk, and I've also gained some memories of Thien Bao too. It's strange not to recognize my subordinates." Diem looked down at the boy. "Tell me who sent you," he said coldly. The boy remained stubborn, closing his eyes in silence. At that moment, a long horn sounded, and a Yemsuanlian sailboat approached, its bow about 20 meters away. On the ship's bow, a boy aged 10, 13, or 14 saw Diem and quickly finished the cake in his hand before shouting, "Thien Bao, stop playing around. There's trouble at home." Diem patted Chaitudao's shoulder, quickly tied a board between two ships, and swiftly boarded the other ship. "They were planning to kill me just now," he said as the boy lying on the ground was left for Chaitiudao to deal with. Hearing Diem's words, Chaitiudao looked at the axe behind him and approached the boy. As he got closer, the black blade of the axe was raised high. The boy panicked and shouted, "Chuban sent me." But before he could finish his sentence, blood sprayed as Diem boarded the ship. Turning back, Diem asked the dying boy what he wanted to say before he died. Chaitiudao was also surprised, taking a moment to think before saying, he said pig trotters. Diem suspected that this boy possessed formidable strength, and there was definitely an issue at hand. He activated the Hong Hat Kin Fien technique, entering the Kwaikali state, one of the 800 high-level demons of the 5 leagues, specializing in naval warfare with an 80% red threat level. Chaitiudao looked worried and hesitant. "Even a kid with a red threat level is dangerous," he murmured. The danger posed by this fruit exceeded imagination. Suddenly, Diem came up with an idea. He instructed the sailors on the ship not to provoke any more trouble and to help them throw the bodies of the scoundrels into the sea. As for those killed by mistake, let the ship's owner handle it. Many bodies were tossed overboard like stuffed pillows. Diem called Truong Vi and Hak Tu back, 2 skilled deep-sea divers who were undoubtedly masters of their craft. "You two dive down and carefully observe if anyone retrieves the bodies. If they do, follow them closely, gather information about their backgrounds, and report back," Diem ordered. The two immediately jumped into the water. Tiube returned to the ship and asked Diem and Chaitiudao where they were going. Diem responded casually, "We're going to play Banuong together." Tiube was irritated. "Chaitiudao, why are you quiet? I'm asking Thien Bao, not you. Which is better, playing cards or roasting pigs?" At that moment, another sailor chimed in, "You should ask your mom. How many people does it take to play Banuong?" He jumped on a crate, stuffed a piece of cake in his mouth, then coldly looked at Tiube. I don't understand your insult, the sailor said, before turning away. The ship fell silent, a bit embarrassed. Another sailor tried to console Tuba. No one is cursing at you. After hearing this, Tuba turned to Lai Diem. Thien Bao, how many people usually played Ban Yuong? Lai Diem waved his hand, mumbling, probably just one person. You'll understand in a few years. Then he lifted a crate and threw it to the deck. You guys figure it out, he said as Tuba's group rushed to grab the object. Lai Diem thought to himself that even without Songoe-san, relying solely on Kohochu's power, he could exert tremendous force. When testing this power against each other, the outcome was uncertain. They reached the conclusion that brute strength alone wasn't enough to guarantee victory. Their ironclad bodies possessed extraordinary power, but it took skill and strategy to be truly formidable. Lai Diem shared the recent information with Che Tudao, who looked serious. Directly confronting Mado Kwaikali was no small feat. Legend had it that he had sown calamity along the southeastern coast until Thien Mado subdued him, making him the subordinate of the Holy Mother, a position higher than the 3 Emerald Masters in the southeastern region. He could be said to be the most influential deity in the Taoist pantheon. If Mado could inherit this legacy, it would be the most prestigious lineage Lai Diem had ever witnessed. Since entering Diem Phu, the stronghold of the Red Gang, the ship was packed with countless swords, guns, and barrels of ammunition. As Lai Diem stepped onto the ship, the system's female voice rang out, announcing the successful completion of a static cargo delivery mission. This time, the value of the cargo was immeasurable. Suddenly, a giant one-eyed man charged towards Lai Diem. Thien Bao, Thafun Han won't make it through this. Lai Diem's expression turned serious. He quickly gave orders to clear the way. You're done, he yelled, leading the charge. Lai Diem and Che Tudao swiftly darted into the forest towards the house. Observing the group ahead, Lai Diem quickly analyzed the situation. The execution team of the Honkai Bang had over 100 members, all Kaolikwai, with over 200 in total under Thafun Han's command. These were crucial factors for her to control the gang. In the courtyard, a girl aged 7 or 8 hubbed an embroidered ball, running towards Lai Diem. Thien Bao, Thafun Han is bleeding a lot, she cried. Lai Diem realized she was the daughter of the Bang Honki leader. He lifted her and asked gently why Tuanai was sad. The girl cried, Thien Bao, my mom is bleeding a lot. Looking into the house, Lai Diem gently stroked Tuanai's hair before stepping in. Che Tudao tried to follow but was stopped by a red scarf member. What are you doing? Che Tudao intervened. I forgot, I'm just a lackey now, he joked before turning back. Over 10 years ago, a newborn baby was found in a wooden basin, drifting from a storm to the island. Fortunately, the pirates on the island found it, believing it was protected by the Great Holy Mother, which was why the child survived. Thus, Thien Bao gained his nickname. At the age of 3, Thien Bao grew up among the pirates. Thanks to his courage and determination, he was adopted by the leader of the Honki gang, which elevated his status within the gang. After 10 years of countless battles, Thien Bao became renowned far and wide, though still regarded as a newcomer compared to the seasoned veterans steeped in blood within the gang. However, the situation suddenly changed 2 years ago when the leader of Honki, the alliance chief in Hukitrin, passed away abruptly in a shipwreck. With no son, only a 5-year-old daughter named Honki, the situation became chaotic. At that moment, his wife, Thafun Han, stood up resolutely. Seizing the opportunity amidst the turmoil, she utilized the forces of Thien Bao, her adopted son, to eliminate nearly all dissidents. Simultaneously, she raided several large merchant ships belonging to Taegoam, winning over the hearts and minds of the people. In the following 2 years, the Honki gang not only did not weaken but became even more powerful. Although Thafun Han was talented, she remained a widow, with few trusted allies. The person she trusted the most was Thien Bao. To the younger generation, Thien Bao was a righteous figure deserving of leadership. For nearly half a year, Thafun Han handed over all major and minor affairs to Thien Bao. Despite joining the gang just over 10 years ago, he had already proven himself as a capable successor. At this point, Thien Bao's credibility within Honki was sufficient to sway everyone. If Thafun Han were to step down, he would easily assume power with just a piece of paper. Diem had seized control of the entire Hongqi organization, with tens of thousands of people and hundreds of ships under his command. He had garnered widespread support under the identity of Diem Than, positioning himself to potentially become a pirate leader renowned in the Namhai region. While Diem's actions were indeed commendable, it takes more than just power to succeed. No matter how strong one's influence, it must translate into tangible benefits. Ascending to power still required strategic maneuvering. However, when Diem stepped forward, 10 guns were suddenly aimed at him. Before he could retreat, the one-eyed guide pointed a gun at Diem's side. "Thien Bao, I'm sorry, but we're just hired hands," he said. "You'll have to sort things out with Thafun Han yourself." Diem glanced at the knife calmly, without panic, and looked directly at the bed behind the curtain. "Mom, I'm a little late, forgive me," he said. Thafun Han sighed in disappointment, her eyes filled with resentment. "La Nuong, my son, you've returned late. Haven't you already compensated them? Why the need for knives and guns?" Diem heard the tone and felt puzzled. In Thien Baotu's memories, he called Thafun Han Mom. Wasn't that the case? But Thafun Han's reaction was different. However, he remained silent. "La Nuong, big fortune, big life, very lucky. Just a few bullets grazing me, and you're back late. Why the need for guns and knives?" Thafun Han laughed coldly. "When he was alive, he always ordered you to chase after them. Now that he's dead, and you're calling out La Nuong, dear son, do you want to bite me to death? Haha." Then she turned her body forward, her eyes full of ferocity, looking at Diem. "Thien Bao, why did I point the gun at you like this?" Diem stood up abruptly, his voice hoarse. "Why like this?" Thafun Han remained calm, buttoning up her coat. "Abusing the power of the yin-yang too early. This time, we've been exposed. This time, I can't hold on anymore. Thien Bao, I'm about to die. Before I die, do you agree to marry me?" Diem was stunned. Thien Baotu and Thafun Han had a fundamental relationship. The truth was dramatic. Seeing Diem silent, Thafun Han continued, "From childhood, Tonhai called you big brother. Now it's hard to change. But Tonhai can't call you father. I'm about to die, and it's hard to rest assured. Diem, before I die, can you agree to marry me?" Diem silently thought. These two had been in love since before Trin Akwe's death. He was the one who found it hard to close his eyes. Thafun Han grabbed Diem's collar. "You don't want to marry me, just say so. Do you need to hold a knife to me?" The man beside her held a rough knife, waiting for an answer. "Did Trin Akwe's death happen because of you?" Diem quickly analyzed the rumor. Trin Akwe's death was due to the shipwreck, but with the current information, Thien Baotu was the logical culprit because he benefited the most from that death. However, the truth was irrelevant. Whether Thien Baotu was insane or innocent, it had nothing to do with Diem. He just needed to clean up. While Diem hesitated, Dan Ong's voice suddenly rang in his ear. "General, you must trust me," she said. "Follow my lead." Diem complied, knowing he had to listen to Dan Ong. Thafun Han's eyes narrowed as she tightened her grip on Diem's collar. After a moment of silence, she smiled brightly. "You are indeed clever," she said. "I thought you were just a fool. But even if you say so, I know that Nat Kuei did not die because of you. Firstly, I understand your personality. Secondly, even though you shine brightly now, when I kidnapped you, you were still wetting the bed. If you had truly killed him, I would have investigated long ago." Diem realized he couldn't keep up with this woman's thoughts. He didn't understand what she was plotting before her death. Thafun Han slowly walked to the table and asked Diem to heat water for her. Soon after, she soaked a towel in the basin of water, wiping her body while unbuttoning her coat. She spoke calmly, reminiscing about their past love. "We fell in love because of me. The affection gave birth to Tunny, and we were both happy and sincere. Honestly, I don't feel guilty towards Nat Kuei. He was useless and couldn't satisfy me. When he died, I had to build him a grave out of respect. I held 8,900 of the over 1,000 Kalikwai of Hongqi when they were just 10 years old. I started to manage the gang of tens of thousands of people in Hongkong. Everyone recognized me, but no one knew his face. We've been dreaming together for 20 years. I treated him kindly, but you didn't think so. For the past 2 years, I've mentioned our marriage, but you kept avoiding it, even sleeping outside the camp several nights to avoid me. Do you feel guilty towards Nakwe, towards his nurturing? Have you ever thought about my feelings, besides boasting that Thin Botu is so magnificent? Why are you so timid with me? But today, you've done well, making my heart feel lighter. Perhaps you understand my feelings and want to comfort me. Sometimes I think if there truly is a man who dared to kill Nakwe and stay by my side, it would be good. But let's leave that for the next life. For now, I just hope you take good care of Tunny. Lydium listened silently as the woman poured out her feelings. It was difficult to understand why she would feel happy if Thin Baotu had truly killed Nakwe. He asked Danuam, but she just gave vague answers. He didn't understand women's psychology. Thafonhan's next words sent chills down Lydium's spine. My possessions are too unpredictable. I don't want to leave them to Tunny. After I die, you take my 6 vertebrae and soak them in Yemsui lion's blood for days and nights. Then grind them with the blood and drink it all. That way, you'll get half of my strength. Thienbao, you have courage. I trust you to take care of them while I'm still alive. I'm just angry at your coldness over the past 2 years. Now looking back, it's meaningless. I just hope to meet you again in the next life. I have to find someone who can subdue me, whether it's Nakwe or you. The debt of this life belongs to you too. If it's someone from the next generation, so be it. I just hope you take good care of Tunny. Lydium silently took the blood-stained cloth from her hand, deeply contemplating his first encounter with this woman. There was no chance at all. Although he wasn't Thienbao, he still couldn't fulfill her wishes. All he could do was help her depart peacefully. He gently wiped the blood from her body with the cloth, and everywhere the cloth touched, the woman trembled. Please don't close your eyes for 2 more days, she said quietly. The woman didn't say anything else, just glanced meaningfully at Lydium before quietly retreating, closing the door behind her. She turned to the 10 guards outside the door. Thatnuam, let them in, she said. They glanced at each other, letting Lydium step into the room. Lydium looked at Chetiudeo sitting on the ground, then sat down beside him and smoked a cigarette. About an hour later, the one-eyed leader of the Kaolikwai spoke to Lydium with a trembling voice. Mrs. Thienbao has a message for you, 112, he said. Lydium stood up and asked who the government official was today. To Trayan he hesitated before answering. Traco Hung, the Spray Frontier governor. Lydium listened to his plan with everyone, advancing into Kwangdong, attacking Homan, breaking the Sarak fortress, and attacking Homan. Ships crossing the water. In the camp, everything was as calm as usual. Lydium sat on a bamboo chair, analyzing the coastal defense map of Kwangdong. Although the map was from 4 years ago, the actual defense of the court was not much different. We have tens of thousands of green boats, countless ammunition, and even shipyards in Daivosan. If we just steal 10,000 taels of silver as requested, the Namduong event won't be difficult. But that's still not enough. In this stormy sea area, the court's navy and pirates from Taedong will surely benefit. Attacking Homan is just the beginning. Looking at Chetiudeo sitting across from him, Lydium decided to be clear. Let's cooperate, it's easier to handle, he said. You know I plan to attack Homan. The Diem Phu event can be shared. Do you want to join? Chetiudeo thought for a moment before speaking. I don't have any issues, but the pirates actively attacking the court. This is the first I've heard of it. Are you sure about this? It's quite risky. Lydium shook his head and explained. In this sea area, the court's power is probably the easiest to deal with in the world. The court is weakened, and the Spanish pirates have occupied Macau for over 200 years. Their giant Catholic fleet is terrifying, with ships carrying over 100 cannons, surpassing even the Hongkong era. The pirates also have their own tactics, difficult to deal with. Only the court, though seeming powerful, is actually weak. The corrupt navy is called the Great Fleet, but mostly just fishing boats. Ships longer than 10 meters are rare. The influence in Namdong is not as significant as imagined. After listening, Chaitudeo also saw the logic. Throughout history, it's always been officials ruling the people, never the other way around. This would definitely be a shocking move, but if Diem was determined, he would join in. Diem then asked P10, who had used his shape-shifting technique to deceive him before, if he could still do it. Chaitudeo nodded, confirming that P10 indeed possessed that ability. He then explained the process of swallowing characters to activate the transformation effects, emphasizing the need to swallow the human face, peach blossom character to unlock the identity transformation effect. Killing the target would create a fake body identical to the target's appearance, while killing the target and transforming would change the user's appearance, but without copying the target's appearance. The user must pay attention because controlling the fake body restricts their own movement, and if they move freely, they can't control the fake body. After hearing this, Diem asked about the process of swallowing characters. Chaitudeo explained that swallowing one character required 200 Diem Phu points, and swallowing 1,000 Diem Phu points designated the current character he had swallowed as Bax Nan Dao. So the human face peach blossom transformation hadn't been unlocked yet. Diem immediately offered to lend him 2,000 points, as this ability would be very useful. But he emphasized that he would choose the spoils of war at Homon first. Additionally, this time, it was thanks to Lutu for lending him points in exchange for a 4-6 split. Chaitudeo smiled and agreed, sealing the deal. Feeling that everything was settled, Diem confidently stated that they would depart tonight to attack the Homon coastal gate, killing Tratohung and igniting a torch to light up the dark night. Over 10 boats were lined up along the shore, ready to be transferred onto the ship's deck. The crowd cheered as they boarded the boats, filled with excitement. Inside the bamboo room, Diem spoke to Phaphonhan. Over 100 Kaliquai are your people, but they are also my force. I haven't contacted many people in Honki, and Tony's sister has already left. I'm not sure if I can handle it. This time, cutting off the head of the governor of Homon is either for revenge for you or to show the court's convenience for future matters. Phaphonhan's face turned paler as Diem spoke at length. The future will be very difficult, he said finally. Diem walked out, leaving Phaphonhan alone in the room, murmuring to herself, I want to say something gentle, but in my heart, I still feel like I haven't lived enough. But I have to leave. The sea wind howls, and dark clouds gather. At the entrance, the Homon Sea Gate is the gateway guarded by the Kwangdong Court. Here, not only are there soldiers guarding, but there's also the Yemsayan Lin with a large cannon stationing at Vientui. Vientui hasn't fired a shot in over 10 years, but its scale is still formidable. Near the second floor, the flower shop near the sea gate is full of exquisite dishes on the table, hosted by Trakoham. Forgive me, Mr. Truong, Diem said. I just returned from defeating the pirates. This banquet is temporary. When I return to Guangzhou, I'll definitely invite you to a famous restaurant for a feast. Sitting across from him was Truong Dong, a close confidant of the new governor, Luong Quang. Mr. Truong is too modest, he said. You destroyed Bakhaktu in Taijiang, terrifying the pirates. I'm just a coward, too afraid to accept the invitation from the esteemed gentleman. Truong Dong nodded as if understanding, but deep down he knew well. Half a month ago, Lam Su was granted the title of governor by the king, becoming the supreme guardian of the sword. He took office as Luong Quang, overseeing both military and civilian affairs in 2 provinces. His purpose in coming here was twofold: to crack down on corruption within the military and the government, and to suppress pirates to protect Nandong's commerce. Trakoham, though the highest-ranking military official present, was only a county-level general and couldn't compare to the court officials. That's why he showed humility towards Diem, a disciple of Lam Su. So when Trakoham spoke, he said, Don't be modest. I've heard of you for a long time. Speaking of which, Lam Dai in hand is sick and may be delayed a few days. Do you know where he is now? Truong Dong smiled knowingly, understanding that he was only answering vaguely. Lam Su won't be delayed according to the royal decree. He won't be long after this meal, Truong Dong said confidently. Mr. Lam has already met with him. Trakoham looked uncomfortable and glanced at the old man beside him, Truong Dong, reproaching him for being insensitive to leave the 2 of them dining alone. Though annoyed, he couldn't say anything. Truongdong noticed his gaze and changed the subject, pointing out the Yemzuyen window, where the 8 major river mouths converged into the sea, the #1 sea gate of Taijiang, dominated by Lamzu. The gentleman has the talent to control the 5 sea gates, truly a gatekeeper whom no one can surpass. Truongdong flattered. Tratohung waved modestly, and Truongdong continued, asking about the rumors of Thien Bao pirates in the west, their powerful fleet, and hundreds of cannons. Upon hearing this, Tratohung slammed the table, raising his voice. Thien Bao, Mr. Truong, you don't know anything. Thien Bao is just a bunch of hangers-on. If they truly had that many people and cannons, why haven't they attacked Homan yet? The sound of cannons roaring suddenly pierced through the air, terrifying everyone's ears. In the dimly lit night, streaks of fire tore through the sky, and the continuous sound of cannons from the distant fortress resonated. The cannons fired several shots, sinking the guarding ships in the sea, painting the sea and boats red with fire. Soldiers fell into the sea one after another, disappearing forever. The entire Homan Sea Gate now became half sea, half fire. Tuba sat cross-legged on the bow of the ship, smiling sinisterly. At that moment, the female voice of the system rang out, activating the hidden event of capturing Homan. The event involved capturing Homan for 2 hours, killing the chief naval officer, Tratohung, defeating the naval defense, and staying in Homan for 1 hour. Completing the event would expand purchasing rights and provide special rewards. Note: Thien Bao has a fleet, so it shouldn't be difficult, right? Red flags flew, and cannonballs whizzed past the heads of the soldiers on the wall, barely giving them time to react before their vision blurred in the sea of red flames. In just a few breaths, the sea was filled with corpses and broken ship fragments. At that moment, from amidst the sea of fire and black smoke, a small boat emerged. The person on the boat shouted to the soldiers on the wall, "Open the sea gate quickly." The guards stood stunned, their faces filled with horror, as the figure of a military official emerged, covered in blood and soot, yet they still recognized him as Tratohung. Truly, with the sound of the opening gate, thousands of pounds of water were gradually lifted, and the Homan Sea Gate was fully opened. The small boat sailed through the gate, and the man on the boat suddenly raised his hand. Countless cotton balls flew off his fingertips, slipping into the gaps of the gate, locking it tightly. The gate guards stood frozen, their faces full of horror, looking at the decrepit figure. At that moment, the figure suddenly revealed himself to be Che Tiudao, having used his identity transformation technique. He then broke down the door, jumped down, and brandished 2 axes wildly. In just a few breaths, all the guards beside the door were annihilated, and Tratohung's mind was in chaos, looking at the fleet on the sea. The sound of gunfire ringing in his ears made his heart tremble. If the governor knew about this, his career would be over, charged with neglecting his duty. This was enough to cost him his head. No mad pirate would dare to attack a port controlled by the court. This was no longer robbery or smuggling. It was a genuine rebellion against the Hongqi regime. Truongdong's eyes gradually turned cold. "Is this the Bang Hongqi, sir?" Tratohung, in agony, pretended to be drunk and hurriedly left. Seeing Tratohung leave, the old man beside Truongdong wiped the corners of his mouth. He was none other than Governor Luongquanglam, disguised in the prefectural palace. Truongdong read the decree, violently attacking fortifications, openly opposing the court, rebellion, major rebellion, no mercy according to the law, without distinction. All must be executed. Family members are not allowed to worship or mourn. Men aged 16 and above, regardless of residence or escape, along with sons under 15, will be exiled 3,000 miles. If wives and children of criminals are unaware, they will be forced into servitude. Officials must repent for 1 year, and officials above a certain level will have their tenure suspended for 6 months. All levels of the court must be resolute in their punishment. Lam Su Truongdong couldn't help but shake his head. The crimes were rampant on the pirate ship, with the air thick with a pungent scent. The once bustling kitchen now lay empty, with only a few drops of water and some pieces of meat left. The preserved meat, once consumed, increased one's skill by a maximum of 15%. The Hong Kai pirates now devoured the preserved meat like wild beasts, raiding and pillaging the royal troops. In that moment, Trak Ho Hung, filled with rage, charged forward without a word, swinging his sword to knock down a red scarf pirate. His sword sliced through the air, aiming directly at Trak Ho Hung. Trak Ho Hung quickly parried the blow with his vertical sword, causing Tiu Ba to stumble back a few steps, surprised to see that his opponent was just a child. Trak Ho Hung gritted his teeth and advanced, their two large swords clashing with a resounding clang. Tiu Ba's eyes filled with determination. He swiftly launched two lightning-fast strikes, shaking Trak Ho Hung's wrist. Trak Ho Hung, feeling the pain, found his arm numb. He couldn't believe that this skinny kid possessed such extraordinary strength. He swung his sword upwards in response, a bright light flashing as it sliced through Tiu Ba's sword, shattering it into countless pieces. Tiu Ba couldn't believe his sword had broken, narrowly avoiding a fatal blow. With one hand, he grabbed a piece of the broken sword flying through the air and used it to deflect a strike from Trak Ho Hung, while the other hand held a dagger, aiming straight for Trak Ho Hung's eye. At that moment, a sword flashed like lightning, pushing Tiu Ba back. The sword continued its relentless assault, driving Tiu Ba backward. In just 2 rounds, Trak Ho Hung was forced to retreat continuously. Suddenly, Trak Ho Hung's eyes widened with anger. As he thrust his sword upward again, a bright light illuminating the scene. Lai Diem, irritated, stepped forward, using his sword to parry before stepping back a few paces, admiring the technique. Trak Ho Hung couldn't believe it when he saw Lai Diem still calm and composed, not flinching at his attack. Meanwhile, Trong Dong, worried, urged Lam Su to leave quickly. However, Lam Nguyen Phu remained calm, stating that the Hong Kai pirates didn't know their faces and that they should only be concerned about the master. Trong Dong chuckled nervously, expressing concern about the current situation. He wanted to see how their coastal defense held up, questioning Trong Dong about their plan to address the enemy's aggression. Trong Dong pondered for a moment before replying that they needed to address corruption within the Navy, train and recruit soldiers, establish a navy, mobilize skilled workers, and suppress the fierce pirates. The old man, with a serious expression, agreed that everything Trong Dong said was correct and necessary. However, he emphasized that defeating the pirates couldn't be accomplished overnight, and reminded them of the historical methods used by the court to suppress enemies. Trong Dong suddenly realized the gravity of the situation, appearing resolute on the surface, while internally feeling bitter. He acknowledged that peaceful methods alone wouldn't suffice and that they needed to employ force as well. In the end, he emphasized that disasters wouldn't discriminate against descendants, referring to the court's leniency towards those who betrayed them, ultimately leading to their downfall. Then, in front of the Tanho Palace, Tiu Ba casually entered the main hall and asked the innkeeper Truong Kwai if he needed anything urgently. Seeing Tiu Ba's pirate demeanor, Truong Kwai trembled with fear, asking what he needed. Tiu Ba lifted a head in his hand and loudly proclaimed that it was the head of Governor Ho Man, demanding salt to preserve it. He then tossed the head to the ground, leaving Truong Kwai shocked and cowering. Li Diem cautioned everyone not to linger, instructing his group not to plunder the streets, temples, schools, or businesses. They could take whatever they needed and to leave after an hour. 1 hour later, they returned to Dai Vo Sun, where Cha Tiu Dao volunteered to take command. Lai Diem felt relieved as he leisurely walked into Hung Ho Tower, hungry and ready to eat. If questioned by authorities, he advised telling the truth. He sheathed his Hoang long sword, and the innkeeper marveled at its banishing act, wondering if it was witchcraft. Meanwhile, Lai Diem noticed 2 people eating on the 2nd floor and went up with Tiu Ba. Seeing Truong Dong's worried expression, he whispered to Lam Su about what to do. Lam Nguyen Phu calmly scooped up the soup, instructing Truong Dong to remain silent and not draw attention to them. Truong Dong cursed silently, feeling unlucky to have just joked about disguises and then encountered a dilemma within the year. As Lai Diem approached the 2 individuals at table 2, he slapped Truong Dong's shoulder. The old man flinched and replied, identifying himself as Truong's second younger brother, a foreigner who came to trade. Hearing his voice, They realized he was a trader from Jiangsu and asked about his business. Lam Nguyen Phu chuckled slightly. Indeed, you are from Jiangsu. Your pen and ink only deal with small trades. This year, ink sales have been booming in Guangdong. The market is wide open. Li Diem smirked, glancing at the old man, then continued to inquire. I've heard that trading ink is quite interesting. Could you enlighten me on the market prices?